Hey, it's Drybear. We still got more to go on the Q&A. This was the longest one they've ever done, so we're going to continue covering. We're not repeating anything. We're just making sure we're covering everything that the developers have said so far. First up is a question about difficulty. This is something that a lot of people are really wanting more of in the First Descendant, and I think the challenge difficulty on the new Void Erosion Purge is a step in the right direction, but I think there's more that they could do to make this more of a challenging game, that like the leaderboards are meaningful and things like that. So they were asked, like, can we get a harder difficulty than is in the game right now? And they responded with, while we are not planning to add a third difficulty tier, so they have like, normal and then high risk in the Sigma sector right now, and they also have, like with the Void Erosion Purge, they have normal and challenge and things like that. They're not planning to add a third difficulty to the new Axion planes coming in Season 3. However, they have confirmed officially that Season 3 Axion planes will start, like the base difficulty of Axion planes will start at a higher difficulty level than the Sigma sector high-risk missions. So the lowest level of Axion is going to be higher than the highest level of difficulty in the Sigma sector. We're also preparing a new type of content where the difficulty varies depending on event conditions. The development team is fully aware that character and weapon performance has become excessively high compared to, looking at you, weapon core system, high compared to the existing content, and we are planning to design and release new content with appropriate difficulty levels. This is kind of like continuing their ongoing struggle with not being able to maintain a healthy like game design ecosystem of like, these are the characters, these are the weapons, and these are the challenges you have to overcome. It's just been kind of like a roller coaster of, this is too easy, this is too hard, this is too easy, this doesn't make any sense, why is this here, this system broke everything, that kind of thing. In particular, it focuses not on simply increasing enemy health or defense, good call, to make gameplay uncomfortable, but on designing difficulty increases in a way that enhances the overall play experience and makes it more enjoyable. It seems like they're moving in a direction of really just wanting people to be able to play whatever character they want in whatever content they want with really whatever weapons that you want and a build that makes sense, without needing a group, being able to do it solo or in a group that has no synergy between them. That's kind of like been their moving goal as they're moving forward. So if they're not trying to do the old school bullet sponge style of difficulty that we had in the 90s and 2000s, then they've got their work cut out for them if they're going to try and solve it that way. We will continue to actively reflect feedback, yada yada. We're going to keep listening, but we'll just have to see how Axion Field does compared to Sigma and how it works towards the builds that we currently have. And honestly, we're probably at a point where we need to either raise the ceiling of what's difficult in the game, which would make the weapon core system compulsory to reach those heights, or they need to look at maybe like reworking the weapon core system or doing something there. The problem is people have grinded so much on it and built so much around it that if you change it now, they're kind of just, they keep digging themselves holes and then jumping in it and then, having to do a Q&A where they apologize and figure out how to get out of the hole they've dug themselves into. So we'll just have to see how this goes. But I think it is encouraging that they are kind of trying to make the next stuff more difficult. The challenge with that is that it makes it so all the existing progression systems that make you stronger become required, because in order to do Axion Fields, if you're a new player or you've been playing for just a little bit, it's going to be harder to do Axion if you can't already do Sigma, which makes the new content kind of strange. So they're in a bit of an awkward position with that. Yesterday, we talked about someone asking about Valby's story, and the director even mentioned that the cutscene that shows Valby on the beach, hanging out and kind of reflecting in her own isolation from other people, talked about how Valby's story is quite interesting, and they hope they get to say, tell the story in the future. And someone asked, as a response to that, what about Viessa? What about Lepic? What about Ajax? What about the beginning characters that don't have their own chapter stories? Can we learn more about them? And the director kind of teased, I would love to explore the story of Viessa during her days operating in Albion's underworld. And what's cool about the story too is we know that Haley is a mega chill, like ice descendant, but it's actually in Haley's story that Haley greatly looks up to Viessa. Like Viessa is actually like Haley's role model, like Haley's hero. So it would be kind of cool to see like the underground, like dark ops side of Viessa, and maybe even tie that into Haley and see how their stories intertwine. They also kind of ominously say, I hope we can create more stories about the Descendants. This one is kind of odd, right? Because like if you're thinking about it as from a director standpoint, the I hope we get to make stories seems kind of ominous in a lot of ways, especially given the state of the game right now. So hopefully this isn't telling of some conversations that are going on internally, but let me know how you take this response from the director as far as like character stories goes. Next up was a great question, and one that I think that honestly I feel like hasn't really been asked enough in these Q&As. The question revolves around the idea of the available stats for specific Descendants and how that can greatly benefit some character designs and greatly limit some other ones. Things like having limited stat selections on external components feeling very samey, and like you always get max HP, you always get max MP and MP recovery, you always get, you know, defense or something like that, and it doesn't feel like there's enough options for that or ways to change the characters. And also, like, some Descendants just have a better kit overall that scales really well when you modify it, and some don't. And there are some Descendants that, you know, if their animations could be a little faster or their reactions could be a little faster or better, it would make them stronger. The best example I can give is, if you remember launch period for Axion, he was very underutilized because he had to pay the animation cost of shooting out his mines. So he had to like animate, detonate, animate, detonate. And it was just so much extra time requirement for Axion. Now they did back up on that a little bit over the, you know, since summer going into the fall and winter, we had changes for Axion where he didn't have to pay as much of a time. But it is worth mentioning that it does sometimes feel like some Descendants have too much of an upfront cost to do what they do, that even with a full build, they still fall behind other Descendants. So the director says in response to that, I also agree with the concerns regarding pre and post delay of skill motions. While skill motion quality is important for presentation, it also directly affects the usability. So the development team is constantly working to find the right balance between the two. It has proven to be a more difficult issue than expected. For Descendants whose usability suffers due to the motion delays, we are approaching the issue by introducing new Transcendent modules to help address it. I think this is a good direction in general. They've been adding new Transcendent modules, especially like the new Ultimate Blair ones. They changed his kit quite a lot. Some of the Inez ones changed his kit quite a lot. They started doing this with Ultimate Freyna as well. Things that just like change the kit to make it more useful. But I think in a lot of cases too, there are some Descendants that still need some baseline changes to their animation times and their base ability values to make it, if they're going to spend a long time winding up for an animation, it's got to be worth it in the end, right? Like you can't just have Serena with a gun beat out all the crazy animations we have for some of these other Descendants that put a lot more effort into doing what they do and that sort of thing. Next up is a piggyback off of a question we covered yesterday, but there was a thought of like, hey, when the game came out, Bunny had her identity. She was the gotta go fast character, right? She was the I am Speed Force speedster that stood out for that reason. However, a lot of people complained in the beginning of TFD saying, well, Bunny gets there before anyone else can, so why run anything but Bunny? And since then, they put in a whole bunch of options for Descendants to be able to go faster, to be able to move faster. A lot of that comes with sprint speed cores on the weapon and things like that. Yesterday, we covered a question where someone was saying like, well, it kind of feels like Bunny's identity has been ripped from her hands by adding all this movement speed to every character in the game. So as a follow-up to that, they asked another question, which was, well, can we get something like maybe Bunny's max sprint speed is higher than everyone else's, so like she's incentivized to build fast? Some people say that, hey, the change that everyone gets to go fast is a good change, that not only Bunny can get there and can outclass everyone and get to the boss and, you know, start the encounter before people can even physically get there, or they're still looting behind her. But a lot of people say like, well, we kind of lost the power of Bunny. Really, since Ultimate Freyna, Bunny's been kind of on the decline. She's still good. I played her today while doing my Sugma. super fun. I love Bunny. She's a lot of fun to play, but there's definitely some concerns there. So let me know what you think about this. Should Bunny be faster than everybody else, or is that too much of a problem going forward? Previously, there was an issue where Bunny could reach the next combat area first and clear all of the monsters. We believe this is something that needs to be reviewed carefully. We will discuss internally how to preserve Bunny's unique charm while ensuring we don't return to the problem we faced in the past. Next is a huge thing. Something that I think that they could do better on. Now, I'm super grateful. There was a problem that I had with the grappling system or the jumping system from the very beginning, which was if you fall off a ledge, you don't get your first jump. So like if you accidentally fell off even a little baby ledge like that one right there, you would only get your double jump. And this was a huge problem with TFT, and they finally fixed it a couple months ago. So now you can just fall off a ledge, then you get to jump and then jump again, and it feels super good. So there's definitely a lot of conversation now, and has been since the launch of the game, of what about running into players? What about you shoot a grapple out and it hits a teammate and stops the grapple, which means you don't grapple or you don't go where you're wanting to go? Like, can we get the teammates to stop being an impediment to your gameplay? And the response from the director is, I completely agree. I've experienced myself, and I also believe it disrupts the smooth flow of gameplay. The collision between characters is another part of the issue. We had previously considered fixing it, but it would require a fundamental rework of the underlying structure and rules, making it a daunting task. However, we will discuss whether it might be possible to at least ease the issue with grappling. And this is kind of interesting to me. I mean, we already have in Albion, it is a different area with different rules than pure combat, but we already have in Albion the ability to move between other players' collisions. I believe him if he's saying that it's too much of a thing, or maybe, an engineer is making it sound harder than it actually is. But it would be super nice if they could kind of deal with that. At this point, I think everyone's adjusted to it, so it's not the end of the world, but it would be super nice if they could at least have some kind of address for it. It may not be worth it for them if it is like a 3-month thing. I mean, they've already committed like 6 months to the jiggle effort, the great big beautiful jiggle build passing through the government, but maybe it's worth doing something like this. I don't know, but they do sound like every time they've been asked about this, that removing collision in combat areas for players, other players that you run into, is a very big task for them. However, they may look into ways to ease it by allowing grapples to pass through players. There's, if you remove collision, there's problems where players can stack on top of each other in corners, or if you have someone get inside of another player and then they do a move, what happens, like if you put like a Keelan inside of the collision of like a Viessa, and Viessa does a movement speed thing and Keelan dashes, what happens there? And there's some like server side problems that come from that. But this is their response, at least on the latest inquiry around player collision and grappling. Next up is an excellent question. So I'm like super proud of the Q&A people just asking really, really good pointed questions about this. So this question was mostly around the idea of being locked in an instanced encounter, and when the encounter is over, it would be very nice if you could modify your build or make changes, because you're not technically in combat, right? So when TFT first came out, there was a problem where people would hot swap their modules or their gear, sometimes in the middle of combat, and I think in a lot of ways, it's not good to encourage that kind of behavior. It is very min-maxy, very sweaty, and very powerful to be able to do it, but I think it kind of alienates some people that don't either have the menuing skills. Like if you look at speedrunning, menuing is a very big skill set of being able to open a menu, navigate to what you want quickly and efficiently, and exit the menu and get back into the game. I think most players don't have the menuing skills and will never want to develop menuing skills to be able to do those sort of things. So I think generally it's not good for the populace if the current meta or the best way to play is to constantly be swapping out your build and your character and your modules and everything while you're playing the game and fighting a boss, especially in multiplayer where people can open their menu in the middle of a fight, stand still and die, and they're griefing their team because they're spending time in the menu rather than playing the dang game. So they asked like, hey, is this something that we can look at if we're not going to be able to swap during combat? What about the period at the end of a matchmaking sequence where you're waiting for the next match or you're just standing there? Why can't we make changes then when we know the combat is already over? So the director responds, previously there was an issue where players could receive additional buffs by changing their module setup before starting content. We determined that this module swapping as a strategy before battle led to an uncomfortable play experience. So we applied restrictions to prevent module changes once the content begins. However, I also feel it is unfortunate that this restriction limits flexibility adjustments after the matchmaking. So you have to go back to Albion, change your build, then queue up for the next thing. We will discuss with the team whether this is a way to maintain the restriction against strategic module swapping while still allowing flexible responses based on matchmaking situations, and they apologize for the inconvenience. But it's a great question. It's something that, you know, I've just kind of gotten used to in my flow, and I play mostly solo anyways, so it doesn't really bother me, but I'm curious what people think about this one. And that's what I got for today. Again, this is a monstrous Q&A, so we're working our way through it. We're moving towards the end. I just want to make sure we don't miss anything from the devs, especially now where we're in a lull waiting for Season 3 to come out and everything else beyond that. But let me know what you think about the questions and answers from today, what you think about the dev responses, and where your head is at with TFD in the current state. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.